It was supposed to be just another unforgettable summer night. Music echoing down the dunes, bonfire flames licking the night sky, and the salty breeze wrapping around a group of teenagers like a warm memory in the making. That beach in Oregon had seen its fair share of wild parties, but none like the one that would make national headlines. And certainly none that would end with a 17-year-old girl vanishing into thin air, while dozens of her friends danced and drank just feet away. Her name was Emma Harper, bright-eyed, full of life, and just weeks away from her senior year. Emma walked into that beach party with her phone fully charged, her bracelet gleaming under the moonlight, and absolutely no idea she was about to become the center of one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries in recent memory. But what if I told you that 6 years later, after police files had gone cold, her name buried under years of unanswered questions, and her family quietly shattered by silence, one small piece of evidence suddenly reappeared. A bracelet. Not just any bracelet. The very one she was last seen wearing. And it didn't show up at a beach, or in a pawn shop, or hidden in the sand. No, it was quietly logged into a police evidence locker across state lines. Now I want you to stop for a moment and ask yourself something. What if someone you loved vanished one night, just gone? No trace. No clues. No answers. Just endless nights of wondering where they went, what happened, and who was responsible. How far would you go to find out the truth? What if, years later, you got one small piece back? Just enough to reopen old wounds and raise even darker questions? That's where we begin. And trust me, if you're watching this video right now, you're about to get answers. Real ones. Because this isn't just a story about a missing girl, it's a story about secrets buried beneath the surface, about the lies we tell to protect the people we love, and about how one night, one party, and one mistake can change everything. You're here because the headline pulled you in. A teen girl disappears at a beach bonfire, and 6 years later, her bracelet resurfaces in a police evidence room. But I want you to stay because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about missing person cases. I'm not just going to throw facts at you. I'm going to take you back to the night it all happened. I'll walk you through the whispers around town, the strange details police overlooked, and the people who had more to hide than they admitted. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this case refuses to stay buried.
So, stay with me.
Because each second you watch brings us one step closer to the truth, and this time, we're not looking away. Let me ask you this. How many times have you watched a true crime story and found yourself yelling at the screen? How did no one notice that? Or, why didn't they follow up on that lead? We've all been there. And you're right to question it. Because sometimes, the answers are hidden in plain sight, buried under assumptions, or worse, deliberately erased by those who don't want the truth getting out. And that's why I need you to pay close attention. Everything in this story matters. Every person who was at that party. Every phone call that went unanswered. Every parent who said their kid was home by midnight but never really knew for sure. And especially, every item that mysteriously disappeared that night, only to reemerge 6 years later under circumstances too strange to ignore. You're about to meet Emma's parents, Lori and Jason Harper, who for years refused to give interviews. You'll learn about her best friend Casey, the last known person to see Emma alive. You'll hear about the two boys who gave conflicting stories to the police that night. And you'll find out why, despite everything, the case was quietly closed just 6 months after it began. Was it incompetence? Miscommunication? Or something more intentional? We'll dig into the police reports, the eyewitness statements, and the social media posts that were deleted hours after the party. And most importantly, we'll examine how Emma's bracelet, which had never been recovered, somehow ended up in a sealed box inside a police station 200 miles away from where she disappeared. This is not just a YouTube video. It's a digital crime board. And I want you to be the detective. Because I believe viewers like you, real people who care, who think critically, who notice the details, can help uncover what others missed.
So lean in.
Stay sharp. Don't blink. And please, watch until the end. Because I promise you, by the time we get there, you're going to see something that will make you question everything. Now, let's go back to the beginning, July 3rd, 2019. a remote stretch of coastline near Cannon Beach, Oregon. Locals called it Dead Man's Cove, not because anything bad had ever happened there, but because it was hidden, unlit, and untouched. A place for high school kids to feel wild and free, to drink without adults, and to kiss under the stars without judgment. That night, at least 40 teenagers showed up. Most of them underage. Most of them drinking. Some brought fireworks. A few brought more than that. Pills, vape pens, things no one wanted to admit they had. But what no one expected was for one of their own to vanish into the dark. Emma had arrived with Casey just after 9 p.m. They parked their car near the dunes, kicked off their shoes, and walked barefoot across the cool sand. Emma was wearing a faded denim jacket, a blue tank top, and a silver charm bracelet, given to her by her grandmother when she turned 16. It had 4 tiny charms, a seashell, a book, a heart, and a small letter E. By all accounts, Emma was in a good mood. She'd just gotten a summer job at the local bookstore.
She was texting a boy she liked.
She had plans. But somewhere between the second bonfire and the shoreline, she simply disappeared. No scream. No splash. No sound. Just gone. Casey says they got separated in the crowd. She went to the car to grab a sweatshirt. When she came back, Emma wasn't there. At first, no one thought much of it. Maybe she walked off with someone. Maybe she went for a swim. Maybe she got a ride home. But when morning came and there was still no sign of her, panic set in. Parents were called. Police were notified. A search party was launched. But they found nothing. No phone. No shoes. No bracelet. No Emma. And here's the part that haunts people to this day. Despite dozens of kids being at that beach, drinking, Snapchatting, live streaming, no one saw what happened to her. Not one person could say for sure when they last saw her, or who she was with. It's as if she simply dissolved into the night. And from that point on, everything became a blur of speculation, blame, and desperation. Her parents went on TV. Flyers were posted across 3 states. Psychics were consulted. Theories ran wild. Was it an abduction? An accident? A runaway? Or something else entirely? The beach was combed. Divers searched the nearby waters. Drones scanned the forest. And yet, the case was quietly downgraded to inactive by January 2020. Years passed.
Seasons changed.
New tragedies replaced old ones in the headlines. But Emma's story never fully disappeared. It lingered, online, in whispers, in late-night forums where strangers tried to piece together clues. And then, 6 years later, on March 14, 2025, a routine audit of evidence at a police department 200 miles inland uncovered something that shocked everyone involved. A sealed manila envelope. Inside it, a small silver bracelet. For charms. One of them shaped like an E. And here's the kicker. The envelope was logged into evidence 3 months after Emma went missing. No name. No case number. No explanation. Just one word scribbled in pen across the label. Found. Now the question isn't just what happened to Emma that night. It's how did her bracelet end up so far from the beach? Who found it? Why wasn't it linked to her case? And most disturbing of all, what else has been missed? I know you're feeling it right now, the chills, the suspicion, the quiet dread that maybe this wasn't just a missing person case. Maybe it was something darker. Something orchestrated. And I want you to hold on to that feeling because we're about to go deeper into the interviews, the lies, the cover-ups, and the digital trail that someone tried very hard to erase. We'll speak with insiders. We'll uncover new names. And you'll hear from someone who hasn't spoken publicly since the night Emma disappeared, a voice you'll want to hear to believe. But before we get to that, there's one detail I haven't told you yet. One fact that wasn't released to the public, something only the investigators, and now you know. When they tested the bracelet for DNA, they didn't just find Emma's. They found someone else's, and it belonged to a person who claimed they'd never even met her. Stick around. Emma Harper wasn't the kind of girl who disappeared. Not without a trace, not without a fight, and certainly not without leaving behind 1,000 shattered hearts. In the weeks leading up to the bonfire, she was more alive than she'd ever been. That's what everyone said afterward. Her parents, her friends, even her teachers. She was gearing up for her senior year at Clatsop High, already planning her college applications, looking into creative writing programs, and saving money from her summer job at Ridge Books, the local independent bookstore nestled downtown. Customers loved her. She remembered names, suggested titles like she was recommending favorite memories, and always wore that silver bracelet with the tiny charms that clicked softly every time she rang up a purchase. Her co-workers described her as warm but watchful, someone who gave everyone a chance, but still kept part of herself just out of reach, like a chapter left intentionally unturned. She wasn't dating anyone officially, but there were rumors. In a small town like Cannon Beach, secrets were currency, and Emma carried a few. She'd been texting late into the night with someone whose name she never said out loud. A boy who wasn't in her grade, and maybe not even at her school. Casey, her best friend since middle school, claimed Emma was being weirdly private that summer. She said Emma seemed distracted during their weekly hangouts, kept glancing at her phone, locking the screen whenever Casey got too close. When asked if Emma seemed scared or worried, Casey said no, just distant. Like she was waiting for something big to happen. Or maybe trying to figure out how to stop it. That detail stuck out to investigators early on, but without any solid leads or someone to verify who Emma had been talking to, it became just another piece in a jigsaw puzzle that wouldn't fit. Then there was the matter of the bonfire itself. It wasn't an official school event, just one of those summer things teenagers do when the grown-ups stop paying attention. No chaperones. No structure. Just a few dozen kids, a Bluetooth speaker, some liquor in red Solo cups, and a moonlit stretch of sand where rules dissolved with the tide. The party was loosely organized by a senior named Ryan Kellerman, a popular athlete with a big ego and a reputation for throwing wild, no-questions-asked parties. Ryan claimed he didn't even know Emma personally, though several kids later said they saw them talking alone near the water shortly before midnight. When asked again by police, Ryan changed his story, said he was probably high and didn't remember who he spoke to. That inconsistency was noted, but not pursued.
Why?
Because Ryan's father was the deputy mayor. Because Ryan had an alibi supported by his longtime girlfriend, who said he was with her the entire night. But here's the thing. 3 kids said they saw that girlfriend leave the party early alone. So, who was telling the truth? And who was covering for who? Emma's parents, Lori and Jason, tried to stay out of the media frenzy at first. But as the days turned into weeks, and the headlines moved from missing teen to no new leads, they felt forced to speak out. Lori gave a tearful interview to a local news outlet, holding up the bracelet Emma always wore, saying how much it meant to her. That clip went viral on social media, gaining traction on platforms like TikTok, Reddit, and YouTube. Hashtags like #WhereIsEmma and #JusticeForEmma started trending. Online sleuths began dissecting the case, digging into every photo posted that night, analyzing every blurry background face like it held the key to the truth. But the more people looked, the murkier things became. Someone claimed to have seen Emma leave the beach with a man in a gray hoodie. Someone else said she was in an argument with a girl wearing black Converse sneakers. One video, only 3 seconds long, showed what looked like Emma's silhouette running across the sand, except the timestamp didn't match the other evidence. Another clip showed the bracelet, glinting in the firelight, on a wrist that didn't look like Emma's at all. And then there was the boy from the next town over, Brandon Wells. A junior at a rival high school, known more for his Instagram reels and bad boy persona than his academic achievements. Brandon had been in trouble before: vandalism, petty theft, even a fight at a gas station caught on a store camera. He wasn't at the bonfire, according to official accounts, but he was known to hang around the edges of those kinds of parties, showing up late or leaving early, looking for someone to impress or something to steal. Days after Emma vanished, Brandon posted a photo of the beach, empty, misty, and captioned with a cryptic quote, "The sea never tells." When questioned by police, he claimed he posted it because he liked the vibes and didn't know Emma at all. But months later, a screenshot surfaced of a DM exchange where Brandon had messaged Emma just a week before the party, asking if she was down to chill sometime. She never replied, or at least, That's what the record shows. There were too many loose threads and too many people with half memories and full-on denials. Someone said there was a fight that night, two boys arguing near the fire while a group tried to pull them apart. Someone else mentioned hearing a scream around 12:45 a.m., but they thought it was just someone goofing around. And yet, when the tide rolled in the next morning, it didn't just erase footprints in the sand. It erased timelines, accountability, and possibly the only chance Emma's family had of knowing what really happened. Then there was the strange case of the phone pings. Emma's cell phone stopped transmitting location data at exactly 12:39 a.m. That much was confirmed by Verizon logs. But oddly, at 1:04 a.m., a brief, partial signal registered from a cell tower inland, about 11 miles away. Too far for her to walk, and too short a time window for anything to make sense, unless she had help. Or unless someone took her. Police initially chalked it up to a data error, an echo, or even a glitch in the system. But digital experts on YouTube and Reddit forums weren't so sure. They began piecing together movement patterns based on cell tower locations and traffic cameras. One camera near the northern highway caught a blurry image of a car, possibly a dark-colored Jeep, driving away from the beach around that same time. The license plate was unreadable. The driver invisible. The lead went nowhere. So the case stalled. Then 6 years passed. And now the bracelet, Emma's bracelet, with the 4 familiar charms, is back. And it didn't just show up anywhere. It was found in an evidence locker in a town 2 hours inland, a place Emma had no known connection to, logged without context, and almost discarded as routine lost and found. But now there's something else. The DNA. Not just Emma's, but someone else's, someone who had publicly denied knowing her, who had no reason to be on that bracelet. That person's identity has not yet been released to the public, but behind the scenes, a quiet reinvestigation has already begun. Files have been reopened.
Questions are being asked.
People who thought the past was buried are suddenly sweating under the pressure of new scrutiny. Because if Emma's bracelet made its way that far, what else is out there, waiting to be found? And while her parents try not to get their hopes up again, there's a growing sense, online, in town, and within law enforcement, that the truth might finally be within reach. Unless, of course, someone is still working to keep it hidden. Because the longer you look at this story, the more twisted it becomes. And what started as a tragic disappearance might actually be something far more sinister. Something planned. Something protected. And if that's true, it means someone out there knows exactly what happened to Emma Harper that night. And they've been keeping it secret for 6 long years. Just when it seemed like the tide was finally turning and long-buried answers might rise to the surface, the investigation took an unexpected hit. Less than a week after the bracelet was identified and quietly reclassified as active evidence, it vanished. Not stolen from a break-in, not misplaced by some rookie officer. It simply disappeared from the secure chain of custody room. The logbook still showed it had been transferred for forensic testing, but the lab claimed they never received it. Surveillance footage from the police station showed nothing out of the ordinary, no unauthorized entries or suspicious behavior. To anyone watching from the outside, it looked like a clerical error. But to those closest to the case, it felt like something darker, like someone inside the system was playing a very calculated game. Someone who didn't want that bracelet to be tested again. Someone who didn't want the truth to resurface. Emma's mother, Lori, was devastated. She'd waited 6 years for any sign of her daughter, and just when she thought they might finally get the break they needed, it slipped away like water through her fingers. But she wasn't the only one who felt something was off. A young freelance journalist named Natalie Cruz had been following Emma's story since the original disappearance. She wasn't from Cannon Beach. She'd grown up in Portland, but she'd been drawn to the case because of its strange inconsistencies and the way the local authorities seemed so eager to call it cold. Natalie had a reputation for digging where others wouldn't. Her YouTube channel, known for covering cold cases and true crime updates, had gained traction with videos about unsolved disappearances, trending hashtags like #ColdCaseBreakthrough and #TrueCrimeAlert pushing her work into the spotlight. But now she was getting messages telling her to back off. At first, it was just weird emails, no subject lines, no names. Then came the texts. Stop asking questions. You don't know who you're dealing with. She brushed it off as trolls at first, typical internet noise. But when she returned her car one night after filming a location piece on the beach, her driver's side window had been smashed and nothing was stolen. No money taken. Her camera gear still in the back seat. Just one thing left behind on the dash, a printout of Emma's last school photo, with the eyes scratched out in ink. Natalie didn't scare easily, but this wasn't random. This was personal. Someone was watching. Someone didn't want her talking. Digging deeper, she started pulling threads that most people hadn't bothered with. She combed through old social media accounts, deleted photos, even the archived SnapMap data from the night of the bonfire. That's when she noticed something odd. One of Emma's classmates, a quiet boy named Derek Wallace, had been at the party too. But unlike everyone else, he never posted a single thing about it. No selfies. No party pics. No beach fire stories. In fact, after that night, he deleted all his accounts completely. Derek had moved away 2 months later, transferring schools mid-semester. His family said it was because of his dad's job, but Natalie found a sealed juvenile record attached to his name. And just days before Emma's disappearance, a rumor had swirled through school that Derek had been caught following her after her shifts at the bookstore. Nobody took it seriously back then. Derek was shy, awkward, not exactly the stalker type. But maybe that was the point. Maybe people had underestimated him. Natalie contacted Derek's former guidance counselor, who hesitated at first, but eventually admitted that Derek had confided in her shortly before leaving town. He'd said something about being afraid of what he saw that night. But he never explained. And now, 6 years later, his family had vanished from public records. No home address. No tax filings. Nothing. As if they'd been scrubbed. Or helped disappear. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, an unexpected ally emerged, Detective Shane Rourke. He wasn't part of the original case, but had recently transferred into the department from another precinct. He had a reputation for taking on difficult investigations that others had given up on. He met with Natalie in private, off the record, and revealed that the original police files from Emma's case had been altered. Pages missing. Witness statements redacted without explanation. Even worse, some of the phone records had been manually edited. He suspected internal corruption, maybe someone who had ties to one of the families involved in the bonfire, or even someone in law enforcement itself. But Rourke wasn't sure who he could trust. And the deeper he dug, the more it felt like someone was watching him too. That suspicion turned into fear when Rourke's informant, a retired officer who had quietly passed along information about the bracelet's original recovery, was found unconscious in his home after a supposed fall down the stairs. No signs of forced entry. No witnesses. Just a phone wiped clean of all recent activity and a single sentence scrawled in shaky handwriting across the bathroom mirror. Let it stay buried. Now, everything Natalie thought she knew about this case was in question. Was the truth hidden by a single individual acting alone? Or was there a network of silence protecting something much bigger? Why did so many people connected to the party either leave town or stop talking completely? Why had Derek Wallace's juvenile record been sealed so tightly that even internal investigators couldn't access it without a court order? And why, after 6 years of silence, did the bracelet appear just long enough to light a spark before vanishing again? But the real twist, the one that nobody saw coming, wasn't about a bracelet or a boy with a sealed past. It came from Emma's old phone number, disconnected for years, wiped from any active database, and yet, just last week, someone used it to send a message. A message with no words. Just a GPS location. A spot deep in the forest, 30 miles from the beach, where no one had ever searched before. And now, someone is already on their way there, not knowing if they're about to find answers or step into a trap. As Natalie Cruz made her way to the GPS coordinates sent from Emma's long-dead phone number, the air felt heavier with every mile. The backroads twisted through dense Oregon forest, where thick moss swallowed tree trunks and the canopy overhead dimmed even the strongest daylight. She wasn't alone. Detective Rourke followed at a cautious distance, his instincts telling him that whatever lay ahead wasn't just about evidence or closure. It felt orchestrated.
Staged.
Like someone wanted this discovery to happen, but only on their terms. As Natalie pulled off the narrow gravel road and stared into the woods where the coordinates pointed, her phone buzzed again. Another message. But this time it wasn't from Emma's number. It came from a different line, unlisted and untraceable, with only 4 words. You're not the first. Simultaneously, 50 miles away in the small town of Warrenton, a man named Tyler Jensen stood frozen in his driveway. He hadn't heard Emma Cullen's name in years, not since he moved out of Cannon Beach during his senior year and quietly tried to forget everything that happened that summer. But now, there it was, scrawled on the back of an old yearbook page shoved under his windshield wiper. She trusted you, it read. The handwriting was jagged, like it had been scribbled in a rush, but the message was clear. Someone hadn't forgotten. And someone knew Tyler had a secret. What no one else ever found out was that Tyler had left the bonfire early that night, claiming he wasn't feeling well. But in truth, he had followed Emma up the bluff path after seeing her storm away from the crowd. They argued. He tried to convince her to come back. She told him to leave her alone. That was the last time he ever saw her. Or so he told himself. Now, years later, a cold panic swept over him as he turned the yearbook page around. On the other side was a photograph he didn't recognize. Grainy and off-center, but unmistakable. It showed Emma, from behind, standing near the edge of the bluff with someone else. But the other figure was blurry, almost unrecognizable. Tyler didn't know what was worse. The fact that someone had taken that photo, or the sickening feeling that the person beside her might have been him. Or maybe someone else entirely. Either way, someone had been there, hidden in the shadows, watching. Back in Cannon Beach, Lori Collins, Emma's mother, received a phone call that nearly brought her to her knees. It came from a blocked number, and the voice on the other end was heavily distorted, but it wasn't what was said that shattered her, it was what she heard in the background. Static, followed by a short burst of muffled sound. Then it came again. A laugh. Emma's laugh. That small, breathy chuckle she used to make when she was amused but trying to hide it. It was unmistakable to a mother's ears. The call ended abruptly, and when Lori tried to trace it, she was told it had been bounced through a series of international relays, untraceable, anonymous, and likely intentional. But it was real. Someone had a recording of her daughter, alive, or at least once alive, long after the investigation had gone cold. Detective Rourke, who'd been compiling timelines and cross-referencing alibis from the night of the bonfire, found something else that didn't add up. A police radio log, time-stamped just after midnight on the night Emma vanished, had recorded a call from a private security guard working near the Old Mill Road, miles from the beach, and far from where any of the teens were supposed to be. The guard had reported seeing a dark SUV parked awkwardly near the tree line, lights off, engine running. When the officer followed up the next day, the report had been lost due to system error. Rourke dug deeper, eventually tracking down the guard himself, now retired and living in Salem. The man was hesitant, jittery even, but admitted something he hadn't told anyone else. He saw someone being dragged into the SUV that night. A girl, struggling, screaming. But when backup never arrived and he realized the call had gone unanswered, he was told to keep quiet by someone higher up. She was probably drunk, they told him. Let it go. But this wasn't a random act of violence or a one-time failure of the system. Something larger was at play. Natalie began connecting the dots, and a disturbing pattern emerged. Over the past 8 years, 4 other teenage girls had gone missing under eerily similar circumstances within a 200-mile radius. Bonfires, parties, group settings where alcohol and chaos masked the moments when someone slipped away unnoticed. All officially ruled as runaway cases. All with brief spikes in media attention before being dismissed as troubled teens. All with families still searching. It was no longer just about Emma. It was bigger. And possibly connected. Then came the final blow, an anonymous tip left on Natalie's channel in the comments section, buried among a sea of likes and shares. No name, no photo. Just a single line. You're chasing ghosts. Look closer at Rourke. She almost dismissed it, Trolls were common in the true crime space, but something about the phrasing gnawed at her. Look closer at Rourke? The same man who risked his job to help her? The same detective who gave her access to redacted files, who confided in her when no one else would. But the more she thought about it, the more things didn't quite line up. Rourke had transferred into Cannon Beach just months before the bracelet reappeared. He always seemed one step ahead, knew exactly where to push and when to hold back. What if he wasn't just helping? What if he was steering? And just like that, the foundation began to shift again. Every ally might be a suspect. Every clue might be planted. Every breadcrumb trail might be leading to a trap. Now, with the forest closing in around her, a second phone vibrating in her glove compartment with an unknown number flashing across the screen, and Emma's voice echoing faintly through a grainy audio file, Natalie realized the truth wasn't just buried. It was buried beneath layers of lies, fear, and silence. And someone was willing to destroy anything or anyone that got too close. But what she didn't know yet was that someone else had just received a message too. Only this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a photo. A current one. And in it was someone believed to be dead. The rain hadn't stopped for hours. Thick sheets of water hammered against Natalie's windshield as she drove back toward her Airbnb, the wipers struggling to keep up, casting smears of headlights from passing cars into long, ghostly streaks. She was exhausted, mentally drained and emotionally frayed, but something in her gut kept her alert, eyes darting between the rearview mirror and the dark curves of the road. It started as a flicker, barely noticeable, but every time she made a turn, the same pair of headlights appeared behind her. Not too close, not too far, but always there. At first, she told herself it was a coincidence. It's a small coastal town, roads lead the same direction, people are out late. But when she pulled into a gas station and lingered inside for nearly 10 minutes pretending to shop for snacks, the car outside never moved. No one got out. The windows were tinted pitch black. And the second she returned to her car and drove off, it followed again, same distance, same rhythm. Her chest tightened with every mile, her breath shallow, her mind scrambling through everything she had uncovered. The bracelet, the photo, the yearbook message, the phone calls. She had pulled too many threads, and now something was unraveling. Or worse, someone didn't want her pulling anymore. By the time she reached the secluded hilltop cabin she had rented to stay away from the public eye, it was well past midnight. The car hadn't followed her all the way up the narrow dirt path, but that did nothing to calm her nerves. She parked in complete silence, turned off the engine, and sat in the dark, listening. Her heart was pounding in her ears, and the only sound outside was the creaking of trees swaying in the storm. She ran to the front door, fumbled with the keys, and slammed it shut behind her, locking every bolt and deadlock before checking the windows twice. She turned on a few lights, then hesitated. Maybe it was better to stay in the dark. Whoever was out there might not need to know exactly where she was. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. No words. Just a video file. With shaking fingers, she opened it. The screen lit up with a shaky recording, grainy and low-res, like it had been filmed on an old flip phone. The video showed someone walking through the woods, breathing heavily, the camera aimed at the ground most of the time. Then it panned upward, and Natalie's blood ran cold. It was her. In the video. A distant shot of her standing at Emma's memorial site near the cliffs earlier that day, completely unaware that someone was filming her from the treeline. The camera zoomed in slowly, too slowly. There was no mistaking it. It wasn't from a news drone or a surveillance cam. This was handheld. Personal. Someone had been close. Someone had been watching. Natalie dropped the phone. Her mind raced. Who had access to that trail? How long had they been following her?
Why now?
The walls of the cabin felt like they were closing in. She grabbed the portable hard drive where she'd stored all her investigation footage and documents, stuffed it into her bag, and debated whether to run or stay. But before she could decide, her phone buzzed again. This time a call. The number was hidden, but instinctively, she answered. A raspy, altered voice whispered just 2 words before the line went dead. Too close. Every instinct screamed for her to get out. But where would she go? Who could she trust? Detective Rourke had gone radio silent since their last conversation, claiming he needed to handle something internal, but now she wasn't sure if he was shielding her or watching her too. She had tried calling Tyler earlier, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Lori Collins had stopped responding to texts completely. What if this wasn't just intimidation? What if someone was tying up loose ends? The night dragged on, each creak of the floorboards, each gust of wind outside, sounding like a footstep or a knock. Natalie couldn't sleep. She sat on the floor near the fireplace with her laptop open, replaying every voice memo, video, and note she had collected. She looked over Emma's digital footprint again. The last posts, the snap maps, the Spotify playlists, the TikTok drafts never published. And that's when she noticed it. A detail she had overlooked in her initial search. A song Emma had added to her playlist just 2 days before she disappeared. It wasn't trending at the time, not popular, not the kind of thing a teenager would typically add unless it meant something. The lyrics described being trapped, followed, watched. It was obscure, haunting, and the account that had originally uploaded the song had been deactivated immediately after Emma vanished. A chill ran through Natalie's spine. Was Emma trying to leave a clue? Had she known she was being hunted? Before she could process it further, a loud crack echoed outside. Not thunder, wood splitting. Natalie scrambled to the window, heart thundering, and saw movement near the edge of the woods, just a flicker of a shape. Human. Watching. Then gone. She backed away, hand trembling as she reached for her phone to call 911, but the line didn't connect. No signal. No service. The storm must have knocked something out. Or maybe someone had done it on purpose. The power went out. Total darkness. And in the silence that followed, there was a sound she hadn't heard in years. Emma's voice.
Soft.
Barely a whisper. But it came from inside the house. Natalie. The room spun. She wasn't alone. And suddenly, all the answers she thought she was chasing didn't matter anymore. Because now the only question was, would she survive the night? Natalie stood frozen in the dark, her breath shallow, eyes adjusting to the sudden absence of light. The voice, Emma's voice, still echoed faintly in her mind, soft and fragile, like a memory that refused to fade. But it hadn't come from her imagination. It had come from inside the house. She moved slowly through the shadows, flashlight clutched in one trembling hand, its narrow beam slicing through the black like a scalpel. Every creak of the floor beneath her felt like a warning, each shadow on the wall like a trap waiting to spring. She checked every room, every closet, even under the bed, nothing. No one. But the air felt different. Heavier. Charged. As if the house itself was holding its breath. She returned to the living room where her laptop screen had dimmed, the playlist from Emma still open. That eerie, cryptic song was still up, but now there was something else. A notification. One she hadn't seen before. A file had been added to her Dropbox account from an unknown device. The file name was simple. Look_closer, MOV. Her heart pounded as she clicked play. The video opened with the same footage she'd been sent before, her standing at the memorial. But then it jumped, spliced with clips she didn't recognize. Footage from the beach, Bonfire, 6 years ago. Someone had been filming that night. Not a news station, not police surveillance, someone close. Faces flickered across the screen, grainy but familiar.
Emma.
Tyler.
Lori.
And then one that made her blood turn to ice, herself. Younger. Laughing. Talking to someone just off screen. The camera zoomed in again, this time steady. Focused. Emma was speaking with someone, her expression tense. Her mouth moved, forming words Natalie couldn't hear. But then, clear as day, Emma reached into her pocket and handed over her bracelet. The same bracelet that had resurfaced 6 years later, in that brown paper evidence bag. And the person she handed it to?
Natalie.
The camera angle shifted as the person filming stepped closer, as if hiding in the dunes. Natalie saw herself pocket the bracelet, then nod, looking over her shoulder nervously before walking off alone. The clip ended abruptly, the screen fading to black, then flashing a single line of text, "You've always known." She stared at the screen, numb. Her mind recoiled against what she had just seen. Was it real? Was the footage altered? She couldn't remember that moment, not clearly, but something inside her twisted, like a door opening to a memory she had locked away. Could it be true? Had she really seen Emma that night after the bonfire ended? And why would Emma have given her the bracelet? It made no sense, unless a sudden banging at the door jolted her upright. The pounding was frantic, desperate. She grabbed a kitchen knife and moved to the door, heart thundering against her ribs. Through the peephole, she saw a soaked figure slumped against the wood, barely upright. It was Tyler. His face was bloodied, eyes wild, breathing ragged. She opened the door, pulled him inside, and he collapsed on the floor, gasping. "They're lying to you," he choked. "All of them. Lori, Rourke, even your parents. You were supposed to forget. Natalie, you weren't just Emma's best friend. You were the reason she ran." Natalie froze, unable to speak. Tyler was shaking, trying to sit up. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a battered, water-damaged journal, shoving it into her hands. She wrote everything. Every fight. Every message. Every time she felt someone watching her. It's not just about the bracelet. It's about what she found out. About your dad. Natalie's stomach turned. "What are you talking about?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "She knew something," Tyler said. "Something she wasn't supposed to know. And she tried to get away. But your dad, he was trying to protect you. They all were. That's why they made you forget." It hit her like a tidal wave. Fragmented memories surged back. Conversations that didn't make sense. The time her parents pulled her out of school for a week after the bonfire. The strange therapist visits she barely remembered. And now the journal in her hands, soaked and torn, but real. She flipped through the pages, and there it was. Emma's handwriting. Dozens of entries. Some angry. Some terrified. One dated 2 days before she disappeared, written in all caps and underlined twice. "If anything happens to me, it's because of what I found out about Mr. Grayson." Natalie's breath caught. Her father, the trusted attorney, the community mentor, the man who'd helped organize the beach cleanup that night, who'd insisted she go, who'd made her promise to look out for Emma. The walls were closing in again, but this time, it wasn't paranoia. It was revelation. Natalie didn't know who to trust anymore. Not Tyler, not Lori, not even herself. But what chilled her to the core wasn't just the past. It was the sudden realization that the person who'd tried so hard to forget the truth might have known it all along. And now, someone was making sure she remembered, before it was too late. Natalie barely slept that night. The weight of the journal, the grainy footage of the bonfire, and Tyler's broken warning haunted her long after the front door had been locked and the lights turned off. Every sound made her flinch, every creak of the house like a whisper of the past trying to claw its way back into the present. She sat alone at the kitchen table as the sun broke over the horizon, the cold blue morning light falling over the open pages of Emma's journal. There were no easy answers in those scribbled entries, only fear, suspicion, and a growing desperation that mirrored Natalie's own. The more she read, the more a pattern began to emerge. Emma believed someone was watching her, not just in the days before she vanished, but for weeks, months. And in the margins of one of the final pages, barely legible, Emma had scrawled a list of names. Tyler's was there. Lori's. And so was her father's. With shaking hands, Natalie picked up her phone and dialed her mother. She needed to know the truth, what really happened that week after the bonfire. Why had they pulled her out of school? Why the sudden therapy sessions? Why had they never once talked about Emma again? The phone rang twice before her mother answered, voice groggy and disoriented. But the moment Natalie mentioned the journal, everything changed. There was a pause, long and loaded, and then a single, chilling sentence. "Natalie, your father did what he had to do to protect this family." Natalie felt her stomach drop. Her throat tightened as the implications of that statement settled over her like a storm cloud. "Protect us from what?" she demanded, but her mother had already hung up. The silence that followed felt heavier than the words themselves. The people she'd always relied on, those closest to her, had been hiding things for years. And now they were still hiding something. That same morning, as if fate were twisting the knife, she received an email. No subject line. No sender. Just one sentence in the body. Stop digging, or the next thing you lose won't be a memory. She froze. There was no attachment, no clue who had sent it, but it meant one thing: someone was watching her again. And whoever it was had access to her past, her life, her secrets. The fear, once distant and uncertain, was now crushing and immediate. She no longer felt safe in her own home. Not with the knowledge in that journal. Not with what Emma had hinted at. And certainly not after what her mother had said. The email forced her into a corner. Either keep pushing and risk everything, or stay silent and never know the truth. That night, she made a decision. She drove to her childhood home without telling anyone. The house where it all began. The lights were on, and she could see her father in his office through the window, reading something under the glow of a desk lamp. Her pulse raced. She hadn't seen him face to face since the revelations began unfolding. She parked down the street and walked the rest of the way, every step feeling heavier than the last. The door was unlocked, just like always, and she stepped inside to the familiar scent of sandalwood and old books. Her father looked up, startled but composed. "Natalie," he said calmly, standing. "You shouldn't be here." He closed the door behind her, her voice raw. "We need to talk. About Emma. About what you did." He stared at her for a long moment, then slowly sat back down. "I was hoping this day would never come," he said, his voice low. "But I knew eventually you'd start asking the right questions." She didn't sit. Her heart was pounding, her throat dry. Why did she write your name in her journal? Why was she scared of you? He folded his hands on the desk. Because she didn't understand what she stumbled onto. And neither do you. Natalie's voice cracked. "Tell me the truth." He looked her in the eyes, and something flickered there. Regret, maybe, or something colder. "The truth will ruin you, Natalie. Everything you think you know about that night, about Emma, about our family, it'll fall apart. Are you ready for that? Because once you hear it, you can't go back." For a moment, she hesitated. The safety of denial was tempting. But the fear Emma must have felt, real, raw, consuming, was now her own. She nodded slowly. "I want to know." But before he could speak, a knock echoed through the house, sharp, urgent. Her father's face changed instantly, all calmness erased. "You didn't come alone," he whispered. Natalie turned toward the door, but her father rushed past her, locking it swiftly and drawing the blinds. "They're watching the house," he said, panic rising in his voice for the first time. "If they know you're here, it's already too late." She backed away, heart slamming in her chest. "Who is they?" But he didn't answer. He grabbed an envelope from the safe beneath his desk and shoved it into her hands. "Take this. Don't open it here. Go out the back. Don't use your car. And don't trust anyone. Not even Tyler." The urgency in his voice wasn't fake. For the first time, she saw real fear in her father's eyes. Not guilt. Not manipulation. Fear. Natalie bolted through the back door into the dark alley behind the house, gripping the envelope like a lifeline. The street was quiet, but every parked car, every flickering porch light felt like a set of eyes. She had no idea what was in the envelope, no idea what her father had been about to say, or who was watching. But she knew one thing for certain: this wasn't just about a missing girl anymore. Whatever truth was buried in her past had grown into something much bigger, something that could still hurt her, and anyone who tried to uncover it. Natalie ran for what felt like hours, cutting through alleys, side streets, and quiet neighborhoods where no one knew her name or her past. Every motion sensor light that flicked on made her jump. Every silhouette in a passing car seemed like a threat. By the time she reached the old library on Birch and 7th, a place she used to escape to as a kid when her parents fought, her chest ached and her hands trembled. She found a dark corner in the back stacks, unzipped the envelope, and dumped its contents on the dusty table in front of her. What she found wasn't just about Emma. It wasn't just about that night at the beach. It was an entire web of names, locations, photographs, some blurred, some clear and handwritten notes connecting people she'd known her entire life. Teachers, parents, even the local sheriff. There were surveillance photos of Emma weeks before she disappeared, talking with someone in a dark SUV, standing near a storage unit on the edge of town, arguing with her debate coach outside a diner at night. But what froze Natalie in place was a small, faded image tucked between the pages of a typed report. It was of her, 12 years old, sitting on a swing. A timestamp in the corner read 2016, 2 years before Emma vanished. It meant someone had been watching her long before this started. Her hands went cold as she realized this wasn't just a case of a missing girl. This was part of something organized, long-term, and deeply personal. Her father wasn't just protecting the family, he was protecting secrets that could destroy entire reputations. Just then, her phone vibrated. A text. No name. No number. Just, he lied. Meet me at the greenhouse, midnight. Come alone.
L.
It had to be Lori, Emma's best friend. Someone Natalie had barely heard from since she started digging. But why now? Why suddenly come forward after 6 years of silence? Natalie stared at the message, heart racing. If this was a trap, she could be walking into something she couldn't walk out of. But if it was real, if Lori knew the truth, this could be her only shot. Midnight couldn't come fast enough. She stayed hidden until the hour came, then took a rideshare to the edge of the old botanical gardens, the one that had been closed for renovations since before Emma vanished. The place was abandoned now, dark, decaying, overgrown with weeds and half-collapsed glass. As she approached the greenhouse, the air grew heavy, the silence thick with tension. Lori stood at the far end, wearing a hood and pacing nervously. Natalie stepped inside, the crunch of glass beneath her boots echoing across the empty structure. You texted me, she said cautiously, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. Lori turned, her face paler than Natalie remembered, her eyes sunken from years of avoiding this moment. I didn't think you'd come, Lori whispered. I didn't think you'd get this far. Natalie walked slowly toward her. What's going on, Lori? Tell me the truth. Lori hesitated, then pulled a folded paper from her jacket and handed it over. I wasn't supposed to keep it, but I couldn't destroy it either. Natalie unfolded the page. It was a visitor's log, dated the day after Emma vanished. Her father's name was listed, alongside 2 others, Sheriff Milton and Principal Garnett. The location? A private youth rehabilitation center 2 towns over, a place meant to keep troubled kids off the record, outside public systems. But next to Emma's name, someone had written relocated. See code 17. Natalie's blood went cold. She didn't die, she breathed. She was taken. Lori nodded. They said it was for her own good. That she knew too much. That she was going to ruin lives if she kept talking. They called it damage control. But it was never about protecting her. It was about protecting them. And then came the voice behind her, calm, quiet, unmistakable. You were warned not to dig. Natalie spun around and froze. Tyler. He stepped from the shadows, hands raised as if to show he meant no harm, but the look in his eyes said otherwise. You don't understand what you're playing with, Natalie, he said carefully. These people, they're not just some secret society. They control who gets second chances, who disappears, who stays safe. Your father helped build it. He didn't betray you. He tried to keep you from being part of it. Lori backed away slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Tyler, you told me you left it, that you weren't part of it anymore. I wanted to believe that, he replied, eyes never leaving Natalie. But when she started digging, I knew it was only a matter of time. And if they find out what you know now, they won't stop with threats. Natalie took a step back, her voice cracking. You were supposed to help me. I did, Tyler said. I led you here, didn't I? I gave you the pieces. But if you publish what you've got, if you go public, it's not just you they'll come after. It's everyone connected to her.
Lori.
Your mom. Anyone who ever asked questions. The pressure of it all hit like a tidal wave. The betrayal. The lies. The surveillance. The fact that her entire life had been shaped and manipulated by a network of people who believed they had the right to choose what truth the world deserved to hear. Emma was never just a missing girl. She was a liability to people in power, and Natalie, by chasing this truth, had become one too. The world she thought she knew had been a carefully crafted illusion. Now, for the first time, she saw it for what it was: dangerous, cold, and absolutely real. And somewhere out there, Emma might still be alive. The night was unforgiving. Rain lashed the roads in sheets as Natalie drove down the narrow, winding path that led to the Ashridge compound, a remote facility nestled deep in the hills outside town, hidden behind decades of red tape and surveillance cloaked as security. Her heartbeat throbbed in her ears, matching the rhythmic squeal of her windshield wipers. Tyler's warning echoed in her head like a riddle she couldn't unhear. If they find out what you know, they won't stop. But it was too late to back out now. Natalie had the files, the visitor logs, the names. And now, thanks to Laurie's confession, she had the final piece, a location that no one had dared to speak out loud for 6 years. The place where Emma had last been transferred. A facility labeled Code 17. The same one her father had visited under the guise of rehabilitation for at-risk teens. But Natalie knew now, this place wasn't for helping kids. It was for burying them alive, under secrets and silence. The gates were half open when she arrived, as if they were expecting her. The eerie quiet made her skin crawl. Inside the compound, everything was too neat, too orderly, as though someone had recently tried to clean up something they knew was about to be discovered. The lights flickered inside the main building, a clinical structure that once might have passed for a wellness center, but now pulsed with the stale energy of a forgotten prison. Natalie gripped the USB drive tightly in her palm, the one she'd hidden the night before, copied with every document she could pull. Names of donors, names of missing teens, evidence of medical records altered, erased. A whole database of truths that could blow the lid off a multi-state cover-up. But none of it mattered if she didn't find Emma. She crept down the hallway, past locked doors and soundproof walls, until she reached the basement, a place that didn't exist on any blueprint. The moment she stepped inside, the air shifted. It was colder, heavier, as if it carried the weight of every broken promise made inside those walls. And then she heard it, a faint humming. Not mechanical, human. A voice, soft and low, echoing beneath the floorboards. Natalie followed it until she reached a door bolted from the outside. The name etched in fading Sharpie read only, E. Holloway. Her breath caught. She pried the lock open with a hairpin and kicked the door slowly inward. Inside, in the dim blue light of a flickering bulb, sat Emma.
Pale. Thin.
But alive. Her eyes were wide, haunted, but the moment they locked onto Natalie, something flickered behind them. Recognition.
Hope.
And then fear. Natalie, she whispered, her voice barely audible. They're still here. Before Natalie could react, the door slammed shut behind her. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. And out from the shadows stepped Sheriff Milton. Older now, but still hiding behind that same smug, calculated calm he always wore during town meetings and press briefings. He held a tranquilizer gun in one hand, a phone in the other. "I warned your father this day would come," he said quietly, "but he thought you were smarter. That you'd know when to stop." Natalie stood in front of Emma, shielding her without hesitation. "You drugged her. You kept her locked in a basement, like an animal. For what?" "For the greater good," Milton said without missing a beat. Emma knew what the Foundation was doing. She threatened to go to the media. So we gave her a choice, play along or disappear. She chose wrong. And now, so have you. But then came the sharp, deliberate click of a recording device. Natalie had hit record the moment she stepped inside. The mic had been hidden under her jacket. The signal had already been sent, automatically, to a secure drive and a scheduled social post linked to the town's local community board. Even if she didn't make it out alive, someone would hear this. Someone would know. Milton's eyes darkened as he realized what she'd done. "You think they'll believe you?" he hissed. "I'm the sheriff, Natalie. I am the law here." But then, behind him, another voice rang out. Not anymore. Lori, holding a phone, streaming live. Natalie exhaled a shaky breath as Milton lowered the weapon, panic beginning to ripple across his face. In seconds, backup lights flared.
Car doors slammed.
FBI agents in windbreakers poured into the building. Tyler stood among them, his hands cuffed but nodding toward Natalie with a look of solemn finality. I did what I could, he mouthed. The compound was swarming. Emma was rushed to medical personnel. Milton was dragged away, yelling about manipulation and controlled narratives. And as Natalie stood there, numb, watching the chaos unfold around her, the weight of what had just happened began to crash over her like a tidal wave. She'd found Emma. She'd exposed the ring. She had answers. But just as she started to feel the relief of resolution, a plainclothes agent approached her with something in a sealed bag. We found this in a drawer in Milton's office, the agent said. Thought you should see it. Inside the bag was another bracelet, identical to the one that had started this whole journey. Only this one was engraved with different initials. NH, Natalie Holloway. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't over. It took nearly 2 months for the dust to settle. The compound was torn apart by investigators, and what they uncovered shook the entire county to its core. Hidden beneath layers of fake documentation and charitable grants was a deeply rooted trafficking network that used the guise of teen rehabilitation to mask its crimes. Emma wasn't the only victim. She was one of dozens. Most were never reported missing because their families were manipulated, silenced, or too afraid to speak. Natalie had unknowingly triggered a chain reaction the night she found her sister's bracelet in that evidence bag, and now, every inch of their world had been turned inside out. Sheriff Milton, along with several town officials, school counselors, and 2 members of the Foundation's board, were indicted on federal charges. The courtroom was packed every day of the trial, with news outlets broadcasting live updates across trending platforms. Secret facility for missing teens uncovered was splashed across every major headline, and Natalie's name had become a symbol, both of courage and of painful reckoning. But beyond the headlines, beyond the interviews and media frenzy, Natalie's reality had shifted in ways she could barely explain. She moved back into her childhood home, the same house she had once wanted to run from, now a quiet space filled with the ghosts of memories she couldn't erase. Emma, still fragile but stronger each day, was staying with her. Some days they didn't talk at all. Others, they cried for hours. Healing was slow, uneven, and at times brutally painful. But there was a bond between them now that ran deeper than blood, a silent understanding of survival. Emma had spent years locked away, her voice stolen, her life rewritten. Now she was relearning the world, one step at a time, and Natalie was determined never to let her feel alone again. And yet, for every question answered, another remained. Who had planted Natalie's bracelet in that drawer? Had it been a threat? A warning? Or something more? The agent in charge of the investigation believed it was a psychological tactic meant to destabilize her, to send the message that she, too, could have vanished. But Natalie couldn't help but wonder, how long had she really been on their radar? Had they been watching her, waiting for her to dig too deep? The thought lingered in the corners of her mind, a quiet paranoia she couldn't shake, especially late at night when the house creaked and shadows stretched longer than they should.
One morning, a letter arrived.
No return address. Inside was a photograph, an old one, of a group of teens standing outside a white brick building with no sign, no name. Natalie's father was in the back row, smiling faintly. In his hand, unmistakably, was the same bracelet Natalie now wore. But the picture was dated 15 years earlier, long before Emma disappeared. On the back, written in pen, were 3 words that chilled her to her core. This goes deeper. Natalie folded the letter slowly, the weight of it pressing against her chest. The story, it seemed, wasn't finished. She had brought down a local operation, yes, but someone out there still held the bigger picture. Someone who had been part of it long before she ever stepped foot near that bonfire. And now, she wasn't just a witness. She was part of a legacy, one marked by silence, resistance, and uncomfortable truth. Still, there was peace in knowing she had saved Emma. There was strength in reclaiming the narrative. Natalie had faced down a monster that had thrived in the dark for years and forced it into the light. And though the shadows hadn't fully receded, she knew this much. She wasn't afraid anymore. The mystery had cracked open a part of her that would never fully heal, but it also awakened something vital. The drive to protect. The courage to question. The willingness to chase the truth no matter how far it went. As she stood outside her porch that evening, watching the sunset melt into the trees, she realized something else. There are some stories that don't end with a final answer. Some wounds that don't close with time. But there's power in the telling, in refusing to let silence win. And maybe that's what truly mattered. Because somewhere out there, someone was still watching. But now, Natalie was watching back.